Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'll be complaining about something really stupid that only me and like 3 others of you will care about. But when you talk about Star Wars all day and look at Star Wars ships all day, the little things really start to get to you. So for those of you who don't know, there are a few different Star Destroyer types in both canon and legends. The most prominent types are of the Imperial class, specifically the Imperial 1 and the Imperial 2 Star Destroyer. As the name would suggest, the 2 was a successor to the 1 and had several differences. Before Disney bought Star Wars, the 1 only really appeared in A New Hope, and then in both Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, the 2 was subbed in. In lore, the differences mostly relate to armament, armor, and just general power generation, with the 2 being stronger in most areas than the 1. However, visually, the models for the 2 ships are quite distinct. The Imperial 2 class Star Destroyer, most notably, has a smaller profile at the top of the communications tower. Now, technically, the lore says that what was initially a tractor beam array on the Imperial 1 was moved somewhere within the ship and was replaced with a communications array, hence the visual difference. However, there's also a less noticeable visual detail. The big guns flanking the main superstructure have been changed from double turbo lasers to big barbettes. However, again, that is a pretty minor detail. The thing you almost always notice first is the difference with the communications tower. And if you have a trained eye, and really after this video, you can almost immediately identify an Imperial 1 versus an Imperial 2. So the idea is, across the Navy, that the Imperial 2 Star Destroyer was introduced, and not only did Imperial 1s stop production, but current Imperial 1s were upgraded to a modern standard. That's why Darth Vader's ship, for example, the Devastator, which we can see in A New Hope, and Rogue One is an Imperial 1, has been upgraded by the time of episodes 5 and 6. Regardless, though, it's definitely possible that some Imperial 1 ISDs remained, and that's not really the topic of the video. What is important is to know the distinction between these 2 ships, and also that the Imperial 2 did not enter service until 5 years or so before the Battle of Yavin in canon, and about a year or 2 before in Legends. So to this point, the new Star Wars movies, the anthologies specifically, have been good at noticing this lore and upholding it. For example, in Rogue One, we only see ISD 1s, although it is possible given the time frame that we could have seen 2s, but they were probably pretty rare. In Solo, which is before, however, although the Star Destroyer is not very prominent, it is clearly an ISD 1. So that lore has been done, well, correctly. In The Rise of Skywalker, we see that Palpatine has a Sith Fleet, and pay attention to this, every single ship is an Imperial 1 Star Destroyer. Now, there's no lore problem with that, and in fact signals that the fleet has been hiding most likely for some time. If not, there's no reason why it would be only ISD 1s, there would be at least some 2s thrown in, or more likely it would all be 2s, because they were the more powerful ship. But still, that's a bit of world building that we'll probably learn about for the visual guide or some behind the scenes book. However, there have also been major experience ruining issues which I have to talk about. No, not really, I'm just joking, but there have been some minor mistakes that I think could be fixed quite easily. First of all, regarding The Rise of Skywalker, some of the posters have got the Star Destroyers wrong. Instead of having ISD 1s, they have ISD 2s. Now, I'm almost certain that that doesn't mean there will be 2s in the film. It's probably just a mistake because someone was told to find a Star Destroyer and didn't really realize the difference. And that makes sense. I'm sure if I told most people who watch Star Wars, they probably wouldn't realize that there's a difference between those 2 ships, especially where they were probably given some material to work off. With the most recent poster, I actually thought that it might have been a Fractal Sponge Star Destroyer, but I spoke to him and confirmed that it wasn't, and again, I think it's just a reference that wasn't double checked, especially because it was a more minor poster compared to the major theatrical ones. However, the issue that really bothered me the most was in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and although I really love that game, it's pretty terrible with some of its lore. For example, over Kashyyyk, we see Imperial 2 Star Destroyers when that was far too early for the class to have actually been introduced. It's quite likely that they took the model from Star Wars Battlefront 2 or some other game, and it is a pretty crappy model all around, just to be fair, but it doesn't make sense from a lore perspective. The ship there should be, if not an ISD-1, maybe even a Venator, because again, it's only 5 years after the Empire has taken control over the galaxy, but Fallen Order has a lot of issues like that. For example, the Inquisitorius is shown using TIE fighters, and specifically TIE interceptors, which just would not have been introduced yet. Now, if that were the only case, I would be totally willing to hand wave that away, saying it's some sort of prototype or whatever, but the game had a really big opportunity to explore kind of the transitionary period between the Republic and the Empire, like say Star Wars Rebels did to a minor extent, and show these in-between classes. We do see that the AT-AT does look a little bit more Republic than say what we see in Empire Strikes Back, but it also would have been nice if the AT-ST looked more Republic-like instead of just being the standard Imperial model, and the same is definitely true of the Stormtroopers. Although clones were phased out very quickly in Star Wars canon, unlike Legends, I don't think the armor should have been exactly as it was in the original trilogy. Why not make new in-between designs? Maybe have a bit of the Phase 2 armor poking out. Practically, even if clones aren't in service, it doesn't make sense for all of the armor, all of the ships, and all of the vehicles to be redesigned in a period of a few years. And I know the title for this video comes off as super nitpicky, and certain bits of the content here are, but this is mostly my point. We're sticking too close to what's safe and sort of what we understand to be iconic designs when there's a lot of room for innovation. Still, Jedi Fallen Order is a great game, and I understand that there were probably a lot of demands for art assets, but it's just a little thing that got on my nerves, and Star Wars Battlefront 2 was also guilty of this. I know ships and ship design isn't a big thing for a lot of people, but it is for me, and to be honest, it was quite disappointing that every single Mon Calamari cruiser was that exact same wing variant, when of course we know that there was the Home 1 variant, or the MC-80A as Canon calls it, and lots of different in-between ships. But they also managed to mess up the ISD-2 a little bit, and again, I know I'm nitpicking here, but it's just the stuff that I've noticed. Garrick Versio's flagship, the Eviscerator, is clearly supposed to be an ISD-2, but we can clearly see that it uses the double cannons like the ISD-1 would. I suppose it is possible that the ship was upgraded and had the communications tower swapped in and the weapons weren't. So you know what, that's fine, but more likely there was just a mistake with the assets or the wrong assets were used. Anyway, those are just 3 examples which touch on the quote-unquote issue, and I say that because I know for 95% of fans this doesn't matter, and really for me, I don't care, but I think what it does illustrate is that Star Wars sometimes leans a little too heavily on what is proven and the designs that we already know exist in the canon. I would definitely like to see that. At the very least, though, I am offering my services to Lucasfilm. Although there are 1,000 people that can do this, I am the only one making a video. I'm going to include the hashtag HireEck. I will check Lucasfilm Star Destroyers for free. I usually get to play the games a little bit in advance early, and I did spot the issue in Star Wars Battlefront 2 and Fallen Order. So what do you have to lose? You get a massive nerd, and well, yeah. So today's question comes from Sam Speed, who asks about yesterday's video and specifically whether the battle droids used by the Republic were more intelligent than the standard B1 or B2, correctly pointing out that that was one of the major flaws in the Confederacy's army. And that's actually covered specifically in the Essential Guide to Droids. It mentions that the battle droids were not tethered to any sort of command station like the early generation B1s were, but still had a high degree of cognitive function. That was actually one of the main problems with the B1. They were a lot smarter when they were connected with that command ship, but because it was seen as too much of a vulnerability, the ships were pulled out and the droids had to rely on their own processors or whatever techno jargon they used to explain the dumbing down, and they just weren't as effective. The Republic battle droids, specifically the L8, L9 variant, were much more intelligent, and they were less cheap and disposable. They were much closer to, say, clones than the classic battle droids. So I hope that answers your question. I think that was an interesting video, so if you guys want to check that out, you can just click on my page and check yesterday's video, or I might include a link in the upper right hand corner. But that's all I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to like, subscribe, and if you have a question, leave it down below with the hashtag AskEck. Until next time, guys, have a great day, and as always, may the Force be with you.